Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. I always believed love was supposed to be a bit mysterious, a puzzle that two people solved together over a lifetime. My wife, Lena, was an enigma wrapped in a smile that could light up the darkest days. Her allure was undeniable, and perhaps that's what made it so easy to miss the signs, to overlook the whispers of doubt that occasionally floated through my mind. We were sitting in our usual spot at Café Verde, our Saturday morning ritual, when Lena excused herself to take a phone call, her voice a low murmur as she stepped outside. I sipped my coffee, the bitter taste suddenly pronounced, as I watched her through the glass, laughing softly into her phone. Something about her demeanor felt off. It was a subtle change, a flicker of something secretive behind her eyes that hadn't been there before. When she returned, her smile was back in place, perfectly composed. "Who was that?" I asked casually, trying to keep my voice light. "Just a work call, you know how it is," Lena replied, brushing off the question with a flick of her wrist as she poured more cream into her coffee. But I knew how it wasn't. Lena's job at the design firm rarely required weekend calls, and her tone had been too intimate, too relaxed. My curiosity piqued, and a seed of suspicion planted itself in my mind. Later that week, while Lena was out at her yoga class, I sat in our living room, the evidence of her betrayal spread out before me. Phone bills with long calls to the same number, receipts for dinners at places we had never been together, and photos of her smiling with someone else, a man I had never seen. I decided to reach out to this mysterious man, driven by a mix of anger and a desperate need for the truth. My message was simple: we need to talk about Lena. His response came quickly, as if he had been waiting for this moment as much as I had. "Thank God you reached out," he typed back. I thought I was the only one. We met at a quiet bar, two strangers connected by the same heartbreak. As he shared his story, it mirrored mine: gifts, secret meetings, whispered phone calls. It turned out, he too was led to believe he was the only one in her life. The realization that Lena had manipulated us both set a plan into motion, a plan for revenge. "I want to ruin her like she ruined us," I confessed, the words tasting like poison on my tongue. He nodded in agreement, his face hardened by betrayal. "Let's expose her lies. Let everyone see her true face." Together, we devised a plan to confront Lena, to reveal her duplicity in the most public and humiliating way possible. We gathered evidence, planned the confrontation, and set the stage for her unmasking. It was meticulous, cold, and calculated, driven by the raw pain of our shattered hearts. The day of reckoning came quickly. Lena, unaware of the storm brewing, was caught off guard when we confronted her at her own art exhibition, a place where she expected applause, not accusations. The crowd's murmur turned into a collective gasp as we presented our evidence, as the facade of the perfect wife and lover crumbled around her. The aftermath was a blur of tears, accusations, and a final, resounding silence as I handed her the divorce papers. "I loved you," I told her, the words heavy with a grief that was no longer mine to bear. "But I can't live with a shadow." As I walked away, the last sight I had of Lena was of a woman surrounded by the ruins of her own making. Our paths never crossed again, and while the revenge brought no real joy, it offered something far more lasting: freedom. The dimly lit bar was filled with the low hum of other patrons' conversations, but at our secluded table, the air was thick with plotting and the sharp tang of betrayal. Across from me sat Alex, the other man in Lena's life, his face grim as he shuffled the photographs and email printouts we'd collected. "Look at this," Alex said, pointing to a string of emails between Lena and yet another unknown number. "She was planning a weekend getaway. Told me she was visiting her sister in Phoenix." I clenched my fists, feeling the sting of deception anew. "She told me she was on a business trip that weekend." We exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of the depth of her deceit. It was one thing to suspect, quite another to see the lies laid out in black and white. "We need more than just this," I said, my mind racing with possibilities. We need something undeniable. Alex nodded, pulling out his phone. I've got a friend who's good with tech. Maybe he can recover deleted texts or emails. Something she can't wiggle out of. Do it, I urged, the thirst for retribution growing stronger with every piece of evidence we unearthed. Days turned into nights as we gathered our proof, each piece a heavy brick in the fortress we were building around Lena. The day before the exhibition, Alex and I met again, this time armed with a projector and copies of all the evidence, ready to be shown to all her colleagues and friends. It's set, Alex said, showing me the setup on his laptop. Once we start the slideshow, there's no turning back. I nodded, feeling the finality of our decision. Let's meet here tomorrow at noon. We'll go together. The day of the exhibition was cloudy, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. As we entered the gallery, Lena's laughter floated towards us, light and carefree. She was in her element, surrounded by admirers. Seeing her like this, so blissfully unaware, I felt a pang of the love that once was. But it was quickly smothered by the betrayal that followed. Alex touched my arm, a silent signal. We moved through the crowd, reaching the main hall where Lena was about to speak about her latest artwork. As she stepped up to the podium, her eyes found mine in the crowd. There was a flicker of something, surprise, confusion, but it was gone before I could read it fully. Lena, I called out, my voice cutting through the murmurs, loud and clear. She hesitated, then smiled. Excuse me, everyone. I'll be right back. She approached, her expression one of cautious curiosity. Is everything okay? No, Lena, it's not, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my heart. Alex stepped forward, connecting his laptop to the projector. What's this about? Lena's voice wavered as the first image flickered to life behind her, a photo of her and Alex, intimately close, a stark contrast to her public persona. The room fell silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. Lena's face drained of color as more images, emails, and texts painted a vivid picture of her duplicity. How could you? It was a whisper from someone in the crowd, but it echoed like a scream in the sudden silence. Lena turned to me, her eyes wide, searching for mercy. Please, let's talk about this privately. This is the talk, Lena, I said, my voice resounding in the quiet room. Everyone here deserved to know the truth. The real you. As the evidence mounted, so did the murmurs of shock and disbelief from her friends and colleagues. Lena tried to speak, to explain, but the proof was irrefutable. I'm sorry, she finally said, her voice breaking, but it was too late. The crowd dispersed in whispers and sideways glances, leaving Lena isolated in the center of her own ruin. Alex and I watched, not with satisfaction, but with a somber realization of the necessity of our actions. We did what we had to, Alex muttered as we left, the weight of our revenge heavy in our hearts. As I walked away from the gallery, the first drops of rain began to fall, as if the sky itself was washing away the remnants of the life I once knew. The rain poured down relentlessly as if to cleanse the city of the deceit and betrayal it had just witnessed. The gallery where Lena's reputation had been dismantled lay behind us, its lights dimming in the early evening gloom. Alex and I sat in silence in the corner booth of a nearly empty diner, the clatter of dishes and the hum of a neon sign the only sounds breaking our quiet. I didn't think it would hit this hard, Alex finally said, his voice a mixture of relief and remorse. He stared out the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. Neither did I admitted, feeling the weight of our actions settling in. But it was necessary. She couldn't keep playing us, or anyone else. As we sipped our coffee, the bell above the diner door jingled, and a couple of soaked patrons hurried in, shaking off their umbrellas. My phone buzzed with a message, snapping me back to the reality of the consequences we now faced. It was from a mutual friend of Lena and me, the text short and icy. I heard about what happened. Was this necessary? She's devastated. Before I could formulate a response, Alex's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, sighed, and stepped outside to take the call, his voice muffled by the sound of the rain. Left alone, I mulled over the events. Yes, Lena had deceived us, hurt us deeply, but the public humiliation. Had we gone too far? Alex came back in, his expression grim. That was my friend, the one who helped with the tech. He said there are rumors swirling. Some people are taking Lena's side, saying we shouldn't have exposed her like that. That's to be expected, I said, trying to convince myself as much as him. People don't know the full story. They see the fallout, not the cause. We agreed to lay low for a few days, giving the situation time to settle. But as I left the diner and headed home, the weight of isolation began to settle on my shoulders. The streets were empty, the rain unrelenting, and I felt a growing sense of unease about the days to come. The next morning, the consequences of our actions became even more apparent. My inbox was flooded with messages, some supportive, many condemning. I scrolled through them, each word a reminder of the public nature of our revenge. One email caught my attention, from someone I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You don't know the whole story." Hesitant, I opened it. The message was cryptic, suggesting that Lena's actions were part of a bigger, more complicated personal struggle, one that we hadn't taken the time to understand. Meet me at the old Freeman Park. Tomorrow at noon. I'll explain everything. Curiosity piqued and a sense of guilt gnawing at my conscience, I decided to go. If there was more to the story, I owed it to myself, and to Lena, to hear it. The next day, under a gray and heavy sky, I arrived at Freeman Park. A figure approached, a woman in her 40s, her face marked with concern. "You don't know me," she started, her voice steady, "but I'm Lena's older sister, Mara. There's something you need to know about her, about why she did what she did." As Mara unfolded the story of Lena's past, of pressures and pains I had never known, my perspective shifted. The plot of revenge that had seemed so justified began to crumble, revealing the complex layers of human frailty and fear beneath. Mara's words were a revelation, a crack in the armor of anger I had built. As we talked, the sky began to clear, and a sliver of sunlight broke through, a symbol of new understanding beginning to dawn. Leaving the park, I knew what I had to do next. Retribution had been achieved, but at what cost? It was time to face the deeper truths, to seek forgiveness rather than further revenge. The sky had cleared to a brilliant azure, but the storm inside me raged fiercer than ever as I drove away from Freeman Park. Mara's revelations had shaken me to my core, illuminating Lena's actions in a tragic light I hadn't anticipated. Yet, the betrayal still festered, its poison seeping deeper into my heart. I called Alex, my voice steady, concealing the turmoil within. "We need to meet. There's more to the story, more than we knew. It's about Lena." "All right," he replied, a hint of hesitation in his tone. "Where?" "The old warehouse on Dawson Street." 1 hour. As I hung up, a plan began to take shape, a plan to end this saga once and for all. If deceit was the currency of our tragedy, then it would be paid back in kind, with interest. The warehouse was desolate, the walls echoing with the ghostly whispers of forgotten transactions. I arrived first, positioning myself in the shadows. Minutes later, Alex's car pulled up. He stepped out, his posture wary, scanning the dim interior. "Over here," I called out from the darkness, my voice echoing off the concrete. Alex approached, his footsteps resounding in the vast emptiness. "What's going on? What did you find out?" I stepped into a shaft of light streaming through a broken window, holding out the envelope Mara had given me, filled with letters, photographs, documents, all painting a picture of a woman cornered by circumstances, manipulated by more than just her desires. "Lena, she was being blackmailed," I said, the words tasting bitter. "Someone from her past. She did what she did to protect herself. To protect all of us." Alex took the envelope, flipping through its contents. His face hardened as he digested the information. So, what now? We forgive her. After everything? No, I replied, the decision solidifying like ice within me. We end this. For good. Before Alex could respond, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I had memorized, the number of the true puppet master behind Lena's downfall. Within moments, the line connected, and I put the call on speaker. Is it done? The voice on the other end asked, cold and calculating. Yes, I answered, staring directly at Alex. But not just Lena. You're finished too. Confusion flickered across Alex's face. What are you talking about? I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. You really thought I wouldn't find out? That I wouldn't realize you were the one behind all this? You pushed Lena to the edge, not just to hurt her, but to control her. And when I reached out to you, you saw an opportunity to eliminate her completely. Alex's complexion paled, his eyes darting around, seeking an escape. You've got it all wrong. No, I have everything right for the first time in a long while. I turned up the volume on the phone. I recorded everything, Alex. Every dirty secret you spilled about manipulating Lena. It's all here. The betrayal, the ultimate deception, had been revealed. Alex, the man I had conspired with, the man I had trusted, was the architect of my misery. You won't get away with this, Alex spat, his demeanor shifting to desperation. I already have, I said with finality. The doors to the warehouse burst open, police flooding in with their badges glinting in the dim light. As they handcuffed Alex, reading him his rights, I watched, the cold satisfaction of revenge settling in. But it was hollow, eaten away by the tragedy of everything lost in its pursuit. I left the warehouse alone, the echoes of our parting filled with mutual hatred for the betrayal that had consumed us. Lena's deception, Alex's treachery, had been unveiled, but there was no victory in this conclusion. Only the heavy, unyielding weight of loss. As I walked away, the sun set behind the city skyline, its dying light like the final close of an act on a stage long since darkened by tragedy. The paths we had walked together, forever sundered by the shadows of deceit.